What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Locks DFS NFL preview video. We're doing this before the Week 16 Saturday. I keep on saying Saturday night slate. It's actually just a Saturday slate. It's a three-game slate. Lots of nice contests out there for this three-game slate. It's pretty much like a smaller version of the real slate in terms of contests. Not as big as the Thanksgiving, but still some pretty nice contests. Going to be a pretty fun slate. All three of these games at least have – except for, I guess, Houston-Tampa Bay. Houston's playing for something, but Tampa Bay's out of it. Buffalo-New England has a decent amount on the line, but New England clinched, I'm pretty sure. And then the Rams are, playing to survive, basically. So none of these games really have, serious playoff implications, but there are several playoff teams playing in them. That's exciting. Adi's with me, at really Adi on Twitter, Adi Narang. How's it going, Adi? How you doing?
It's going good, bro. I like this slate, man. It's like it feels like Thanksgiving, you know?
Yeah.
It feels just like a Thanksgiving slate. I mean, it is just like a Thanksgiving slate, but I love these slates because I feel like the edge with late swap on DraftKings and stuff is always in play on these slates that are staggered like this. So I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of very clear top plays on the slate as we're going through. We'll talk about them. We're just going to go position by position. You think you want to do that, or do you want to go game by game?
Damn, we should have probably thought about this before we hopped on here.
It's all good. No, it's all good. It's all good. We can do position. I think that'll be better.
Yeah.
But before we do that, honestly, we need to finish the intro. Let's do. Do you want to talk about Prizepicks and you want to talk about the giveaway because we promised to give away on this video?
Yeah, sure. Let's do both. So, usually we do our giveaway on our Wednesday video for Thursday Night Football Showdown. We tell you guys to leave a like, leave a comment on all the videos, and you'll be entered into winning that. But since there is no Thursday Night Football Showdown, we're going to do it on this video. And the winner of this week's giveaway is going to be Hanston Solo. Just left a really cool comment underneath one of our videos this week. So just go ahead and DM us at LocksDFS, or you can DM me at ReallyAddy, and we'll get you all set up with a free season pass of your choice. So that's Hanston Solo. Yeah, congrats. And for this week's giveaway, if you guys want to be entered into winning a free season pass of your choice, just leave a like, leave a comment, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll pick one of you guys for next week's Thursday night.
Do it in Adi's Action next week.
You want to do an Adi's Action next week?
Sure.
All right. We'll announce the winner in the Adi's Action video next week.
Cool.
And then so let's talk about Prizepicks real quick. So we're gonna get into Prizepicks more when we go over the specific players whose props we like and stuff. We'll bounce back and forth. But obviously, there's breakdowns for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the sponsor of this video. That we are partnered with them. Just an awesome site where you can sort of parlay player props. It just sort of puts a new spin on DFS. You can parlay player props and get paid out respectively. You can parlay 2 through 4 guys and you can get paid out either in the flex play, which is sort of hedging your money and you get money back based on if 3 or 4 guys hit or 2 or 3 guys hit. And then the main sort of play where you get 10x for if all 4 hit, 5x if 3 hit. And 2x if you get 2 players, or what is it? 2.5x if you get 2 players that hit. So
you make 1.5.
Right. So go ahead and deposit over here. Sign up, deposit using promo code LOCKS. You'll get 25%, a no drip bonus. So it's just cash put straight into your account. You just have to roll it over one time. For that to turn into withdrawable funds, which is super simple. It's one of the best promos the DFSI has ever offered, to be honest. In addition to that, if you are a returning member, you will also get that same bonus. It's a free 25% no drip bonus, as well as a free 2-pick to win $25. If you're a returning member, all you have to do, if you previously use promo code LOCKS, you just DM the customer support. They have a great customer support team over there. Just message them. You can message them on the website, or you can send them an email, or you can contact them on Twitter and just tell them that you signed up using promo code LOCKS, and they'll hook your account up as well. Go ahead and check that site out, and we'll talk a bit more about them as we get on with this slate.
Okay, let's talk about the quarterbacks on the DraftKings slate. Probably the chalkiest play on the slate is going to be Deshaun Watson, 7K in a matchup where Houston will probably struggle to run the ball. It's also the highest total game on the slate by, I believe, a pretty decent margin. I don't have the Vegas totals pulled up, but it's a pretty solid. It's by far the highest total on the slate, and you're probably going to want the most exposure to Houston, Tampa Bay in general. I would say the second best quarterback option probably for me is just in the same game going Jameis Winston, flipping the script, hoping that Houston hold the lead. Maybe they run a little bit more with Carlos Hyde, even though it is a tough rushing matchup. They're not going to be able to do much, I don't think there. But Jameis is probably the only other guy that I'd really consider for cash games. Josh Allen runs up against a tough New England defense, even though he's got some rushing upside. Tom Brady is bad. Jimmy Garoppolo is decent at that price, but definitely he'd be the next guy to go to, I guess, after Watson. But I don't really think when you talk about quarterback too much, in my opinion. Watson's a clear number one, and if you want to go the other way with Winston, plenty of stacking options for Winston as well. But Adi, what's kind of your take on quarterback?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. Watson's going to be the number one quarterback, but he's also going to be the number one quarterback in ownership. And I actually don't think Jameis Winston is that far behind. I talked about it in Addy's Action video. He was the Addy's Action quarterback last week. It's just such a fantasy-friendly position being Bruce Arians' quarterback. And then when you make a guy like Jameis Winston who just throws the ball deep, he throws a bunch of high expected points throw as far as like end zone throws. They're always throwing the ball in the red zone. They're always throwing the ball deep. And this is a really good matchup. Just like Tampa Bay is a pretty big pass funnel, Houston is equally as big of a pass funnel on the other side, but it's just sort of – they're also pretty bad run defense as well, whereas Tampa Bay has, the best run defense in football. So that does sort of tilt the needle a bit more towards Deshaun Watson, but I don't think Jameis Winston is a bad play at all. I wouldn't even fault anyone for playing Jameis Winston over Deshaun Watson, especially if you especially since Jameis can be easier, even though his top two wide receivers are injured. He can be pretty easy to stack with guys like Brashad Perriman and OJ Howard, who should dominate the workload receiving wise.
Yeah, I'll at least note that that I think one benefit for Winston is that Jadeveon Clowney is not expected to play, so a little bit less pass rush he has to deal with. Maybe a little bit.
Clowney plays for Seattle, brother.
I thought I saw a Houston defensive end out.
I'm trying to think. You might be right.
I thought it was Clowney, so maybe I just what I bet I did is I saw the Texans jersey and then I forgot that he hadn't changed teams.
I'm trying to think. There is no one out. I don't think there's anyone out for the Texans.
No, just ignore it. We're moving on to running back now.
It's just J.J. Watt, though. J.J. Watt's still out, and he's the reason why their adjusted sack rate has just plummeted recently. So,
we'll talk about defense, I guess. But I think that the chalk defense, surprisingly, even though it's the highest total in that game, is actually in that game as well. But we'll talk about that in a second. Maybe a little bit more than a second. Going to running back, I'll do a quick breakdown real quick, and then I'll kind of do the same thing here, my take on things.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to have – I'm just going to plug him in, Watson in real quick. I'm going to be having one of Gurley or Mostert. Mostert. We're going with Mostert here. I'm going to have one of those two. Gurley is more of a usage. He's going to get more snaps. He has a more guaranteed role on the team, whereas Mostert is probably going to play. I just pronounced it differently than I said I was going to. Is going to be playing like 55% of the snaps is probably what I'd guess there. Keeping going down the list here. James White, if you go into the New England situation, pretty much I think this is more of a Sonny Michel game. I think they probably pretty slow game, should be controlled. Buffalo really weak in the middle of the field. They've allowed a lot of really easy runs. So if I was to play running back for New England, while James White has a really nice weighted opportunity rating and while he should get targets, it just really isn't the game for that. And I think the price is too high, where I'd probably just prefer Mostert or Gurley. And then if I'm going to New England running backs, I'd probably go to Michel. Singletary is pretty much a bet on touchdown, but Allen has touchdown equity. Sometimes they're bringing Frank Gore around the goal line. So, if he's not getting a touchdown, I think this matchup it's going to be really tough for him to get there. He doesn't catch a ton of passes. I think it's high. He has had he had one really nice target game where he got 8. But other than that, I think the average we're going to get here is like 3 targets, and I'm not sure that's enough. Tough matchup against New England in general. Not really looking to get too much Buffalo and cash. I think Carlos Hyde should play. That's pretty much – we got 2 more running back situations I need to talk about because we talked about the other ones. For Houston, Carlos Hyde should play. I don't think he's going to have a ton of success. I don't really think he's a fantasy option. And then Duke Johnson, of course, he's Duke, and he pretty much only has a role in the passing game, might get a few rushing. But if we hear anything about Hyde being banged up, he could end up seeing a little bit more of the rushing work. Not that that's not appealing to a spot against Tampa Bay, but he might see a little bit more. On Tampa Bay side, This is going to be a game where they're probably going to end up passing these running backs a little bit more. Godwin out, Evans out. And that's one reason why I do think that that's one reason why I do think Watson is a better play than Jameis, like, easily. But anyway, that's a different position. I think these running backs are going to have a little bit more of a passing game role. But the snaps are so split up that I don't love any of them for fantasy purposes. Peyton Barber's cheap and Ronald Jones are cheap, but I just don't really think I'll be getting too much of them. One last thing I'll say about running back this week is that I don't think I'm going to end up with three of these guys. A lot of times we end up with three running backs in cash games because lots of options, and running backs have a much higher floor and just the same, relative ceiling as a wide receiver. But this week is a lot different, or at least this slate is a lot different, where these running backs just aren't in very good spots. A lot of spots that the usage is split up or the team total just isn't very high. So I'm probably just going to be having two running backs, and I'll probably just run one lineup on this slate, and I'll probably just be having two running backs in that lineup.
I like it.
Cool. Running back takes from you?
I would say for me, I really like Sony Michel on this slate at 4.6K. I think you could arguably project him for the highest touch count out of all running backs, just because most there is probably not going to push 20 touches despite being the lead back here. Gurley game script could get away from him. And then after that, it's just a very thin slate for running backs. So I think projected carry-wise, Sony Michel has got to be up there towards the 20-ish range, especially with the way New England has recognized how bad their receiving options are. Buffalo rarely ever stacks the box. They have the lowest percentage of time they have more than 8 men in the box. So it's going to open up a lot of channels for this New England offensive line to just sort of establish their will with the ground game. So I like Sony Michel a lot at 4.6K. I think he's also got some of the highest touchdown equity out of all these running backs. Aside from that,
first game against Buffalo, rushed 17 times for 63 yards.
Yeah,
that's my. I'll just real quickly on Michel. I do think Michel is a good play, and he's definitely someone I'm considering for cash games. My concern with Michel is just how efficient he is. He's not a good running back, and the chance of an explosive play from him is pretty low. Explosive play being like a 20+ yard rush. So just worth noting, and he's also not going to have usually going. I see some targets here, but I think these were the Burkhead games. Burkhead missing game. So I don't really think he's going to have a passing role. I guess he did get 2 targets last week, but he's not really going to have a passing role. There's a lot of pass to him failing, going for 6 points. I just want to point that out. But I think you could say that for pretty much every running back on this slate.
Yeah, and that's the main point here is that running back is so bad on this slate that Sony Michel on a main slate not having a passing game role is much more devastating than it is on a slate like this, where a lot of these guys don't have sizable roles in there's no McCaffreys out here, there's no Dalvin Cooks. The closest thing to that we have is Todd Gurley, who's got maybe the worst matchup of all these guys. So I think for that reason he makes a lot of sense. I mentioned late swap when I started this video. I think there's going to be a lot of instances where people play Raheem Mostert and then pivot off to a guy like Todd Gurley just because they're priced so similarly. I think that decision is going to be pretty tough. I think most of the time you're going to have to go with a guy who's going to be on the winning team. They're favored to win by, 6.5 points.
You're talking about
the San Francisco versus.
Yeah.
So
I think it's 7 or something like that. Somewhere in there.
I think for the most part you got to go with a guy like Mostert here. But there's a case to be made for Gurley. Sean McVay's willingness to keep his starters out in garbage time is honestly a pretty big boost to these Rams skill position players in case they do get blown out. We saw Todd Gurley reach and surpass value in garbage time.
And I would say about Gurley last week in garbage time is that every single play he ran a route underneath that Goff, who by the way is probably still going to be banged up because at the end of last week he looked awful. Just could not throw the ball more than 8 yards down the field. So if that's the case again, where he doesn't have the same downfield throwing, I think Gurley will have a really good role. Although San Francisco has been great at defending opposing running backs in the passing game, but
and
another reason for Gurley, honestly, out of all the running backs on the slate, if you take White out because of his snaps, he has by far the best passing game role.
Right.
So.
And we should mention the injuries to the San Francisco defense. They're going to be missing. Here are their injuries. Their injuries are Richard Sherman, D4.
Sherman's in.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Richard Sherman, D4, DJ Jones, Jaquiski Tartt, Kwan Williams, Quan Alexander, and Ronald Blair of all those guys, Richard Sherman's the only one who's projected to play in this game. He will play in this game.
I think Quan practiced all week too.
Did he? He tore his ACL.
Wait, cool.
Quan Alexander.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'm wrong.
But D Ford, DJ Jones, Jakiski Tart, Quan Alexander, and Ronald Blair are all key components of this run defense. So it is not a bad spot, and we've seen this run defense leak some holes recently as well. So it's really not that bad of a spot for Todd Gurley if the Rams can keep this game close. I have my doubts about that happening, but especially because it's just Goff banged up on the road versus a lethal pass rush. But if they could, I don't mind Gurley. But yeah, I think if Carlos Hyde would have missed this game or be limited for any reason, then Duke Johnson would be your lock of the slate. 4.1K on a PPR site like DraftKings, it just no questions need to be asked. But speaking of this, jump over to Prizepicks real quick because this Carlos Hyde prop, speaking of Carlos Hyde, is 10.7. You're taking the under on that, right?
Yep.
Like that's like, I mean, Prizepicks is a PPR site, but they're going to have zero success running the ball on the ground here. And even if Carlos Hyde backdoors his way into like a 1-yard touchdown, you could still get there. Like, I mean, just look at that game log. Like, aside from that Tennessee game, he's been under 10.7 in majority of these games. Like,
yeah,
you see his spike weeks when he scores touchdowns or has soft matchups on the ground.
A lot of that, I mean, yeah, Jacksonville,
Yeah, soft matchup on the ground, or he gets into the end zone.
He gets 16 touches, 67 yards, doesn't catch a pass. So
yeah, and so I like the under there, and I like the over on Jameis too. While we're on this, like I think the over on Jameis. I mean, there's no bonus, which definitely hurts Jameis Winston. This guy's hit the 300-yard bonus in 10 of his games this season. That's part of the reason why he averages 24.2 DraftKings points. But there is no 300-yard bonus here, so. But I still think Jameis Winston can get here on the back of 300-plus yards passing in a couple.
I don't mind the Perriman over.
Yeah, I don't mind that either.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Yeah. Other running back things to talk about. I think we're probably good. Like I said, I'm not too interested in Tampa Bay guys. Too much split there. I'm really, unless we hear something about Carlos Hyde, I'm not super keen on Duke Johnson. I'm fine with him because this is a slate where if he catches a few passes, when he ends up at like 8 points, that's pretty good on this slate, to be honest with you, at running back. Looking at this for his value, for his price, but not too interested in it. Okay, so I think our favorite options consensus are probably just Gurley, Mostert, and Sonny Michel.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, moving on to wide receiver, where again we have probably one of the biggest locks of the slate, just someone that you plug in and you move on, DeAndre Hopkins. 8,500 versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay lacks any type of a secondary. They've been crushed by receivers all year. Everyone knows this. But I want to talk more about these Houston receivers because obviously Will Fuller's he's going to be in. I actually have a friend who covers Houston, and I don't even know why he's questionable. Will Fuller will play, and then honestly for me, Kenny Stills didn't play just because we know how bad Tampa Bay has been against the slot all year. And obviously, I mean, he ran great to catch 2 touchdowns on 3 targets last week. And maybe people chase that, so his ownership was a little bit high. But I mean, this is a great matchup for him. It's a great matchup for Fuller. It sucks that they're not at home, but are you gonna have any interest in these Houston guys outside of Hopkins?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-game slate, and they're all going to be in play. I read a stat on Adi's Action about how Tampa Bay Buccaneers games average 7.2 more points than the next highest team. So they literally average a touchdown more in scoring. It's like 58.4 versus 51.2. So like all of these players are just going to be so much more elevated as far as snap count go, as far as expected fantasy points goes. So I think they're all going to be in play. When you get to a guy like Kenny Stills, you're going to have to make a couple decisions between a guy like him, a guy like Justin Watson, who's going to step in for these injured Buccaneers wide receivers, or even a guy like Mohamed Sanu at 3.8K. Just because, Kenny Stills, even last week, only played 60% of the snaps. Mohamed Sanu was right around 90%. He got 8 targets. Kenny Stills got 3 targets. So I think there's some decisions to be made there, especially if that 600 difference in salary matters. But just to answer your question, yeah, I think Kenny Stills. I mean, any of these passing game weapons are going to be in play against this Buccaneers defense.
And on the other side of it, obviously, Chris Godwin out, Mike Evans out. So 3 wides are going to be Brashad Perriman, Justin Watson, and then Scotty Miller got hurt last week as well. So they picked up Snell off their practice squad, and Hyman is there too. So those are their 4 probably that are going to be out there active.
Yeah.
So basically Perriman and Watson is the guys we're looking at here. I honestly should probably read more about what their plan is at wide receiver 3, especially as a team that's going to be trailing. But one reason why I'm kind of iffy on that is because just because of this report about Jameis Winston, you saw the thing that he was talking to Cameron Bray and OJ Howard. And he's like, yo, you guys are going to get the rock this week. Like, be ready to get the rock this week. So I think that we could potentially just see them use Howard as a wide receiver and then use Bray as like an inline tight end. But I think they could do a lot with those tight ends in this game, which is why I'm not too interested in the third wide receiver here. That was a long-winded way of saying that. But okay, but Perriman and Watson are both very, very good plays. Do you want to talk about your take on that? I was just looking at the air yards before Perriman. I mean, we know what Perriman is. We've known what he is. He's a long A-dot type receiver, a guy who, if he catches passes, they're going to be high-value passes. Whereas Watson's A-dot is not going to be as deep. However, he will run much safer routes. He also are much easier routes. Middle of the field type stuff, and he also is very athletic. I don't have his spark numbers and all that kind of stuff in front of me.
4.340.
Yeah, I mean, impressive stuff. That a lot of people have been excited to see this guy for a while now. It's a very good chance for him against Houston. He's only 4,600. I think that he will be very, very chalky on the slate too. Maybe I'm wrong because no one knows who he is, who doesn't like watch daily fantasy stuff. But to me, Watson looks like a great play. But of course, Perriman, I think Perriman's price is absolutely fine too. And I don't mind paying up for him at all.
Oh yeah, I love Perriman's price, man.
Yeah, of course.
I think he should be priced closer to, I think, a little closer to 7K. I mean, he's inheriting. It's less about Perriman. It's more about his role. It's just such a fantasy-friendly role. I mean, it's the Mike Evans, Chris Godwin combined role. And this guy runs a 4.340. Houston has zero ability to generate any pressure, which definitely helps a guy who has a deeper A-dot like Perriman has. He obviously has touchdown equity, as seen by his 3 touchdowns last week. Houston gives up the 10th most 20-plus yards completion. Jameis Winston leads the league in 20-plus yard completions. That's right up the alley of a guy like Brashad Perriman. So I'm gonna have him. He's the easiest guy to run back all your Houston Texans pieces with. So I'm gonna have him, and I'll probably recommend all of you guys do the same.
Prizepicks 13.5, like that as well.
Definitely PPR site. I mean, he scores 1 touchdown, which seems pretty likely. He's getting there, no problem.
Okay, so we've talked about a little bit about the New England situation, but I do think another likely chalk receiver and could potentially I don't know where the ownership on Sony Michel is going to land and how many people will want to play a guy who sucks, but not that he's a bad play, he just sucks. Julian Edelman has pretty clear exposure to New England. I would like to find out how much he saw Tre'Davious White in the first matchup. That would really affect me. I rarely think about too much about defense. To be honest with you, I think more about pace and things like that. And I definitely rarely think about individual matchups. But Tre'Davious is one that I will absolutely account for. He's incredible. But regardless, Julian Edelman is 6,400 and has probably getting 9 targets here. Pretty easily. So there is some worry about his injury, the fact that he is actually injured right now and that he might not be able to make it through the game. He's still expected to play, but people are a little bit worried about that. That could be a reason for fading him, or that could be a reason his ownership comes down. But right now, he to me looks like a very clear option in the mid-range. I definitely think Perriman has a higher upside, is much better, and is in a much better game environment in terms of the total, in terms of the pace. So if you just wanted to go Perriman straight up over Edelman, I would not blame you at all. But what do you think about Julian Edelman this week?
It's fine. I mean, there's some legit concerns about his health, which, typically the Patriots just list a bunch of guys as questionable and they're all fully healthy or healthy enough. But there's some legit questions about Julian Edelman's effectiveness. He's always grabbing at that shoulder or whatever that little joint is that's banged up of his. And so I prefer a guy like Perriman. I have a ton of respect for Tre'Davious White, like you said. I like how the Patriots scheme Julian Edelman the ball regardless of matchup. They're going to try and get him double-digit targets a game, especially with how depleted they are. But the effectiveness of those targets is definitely going to have to be in question, especially now that we've confirmed how good this Bills defense is, and now that we've confirmed how bad Tom Brady is. It's just you really have to question those targets as opposed to Perriman's targets, who are just going to be so fantasy friendly. So yeah, I think he's fine, but if he's going to come in as one of the more popular plays, then I'm going to definitely be underway on it.
Do you see Jaylen Brown in the third quarter?
No, not
He
yet.
went off. If no Jaylen Brown, no Bink.
Really, I'm watching Kemba.
He's like 8x.
I can't believe Andre Drummond has 6 steals. What is going on?
Yeah, he had a good quarter too, but that game's at 22. Maybe Galloway gets there, but anyway.
All right, let's keep on though.
Yeah, let's keep going. Wide receiver wise, pretty much the last game we talk about now is LA and San Francisco. I think that San Francisco receivers are probably going to be GBP options for me. Actually, no. One other guy I'll talk about in Buffalo, John Brown is cheap, but he's just a bet on talent. Tough matchup. Stephon Gilmore, again, another one of the matchups I respect. Really not getting there. But Cole Beasley has a nice matchup in the slot, 4,800. We know what was he on Christmas. On Thanksgiving, he was similar price, 4,400, and he was actually sharp chalk. And it definitely a much different game environment than playing New England, who plays much slower than Dallas, whose offense is not as dynamic as Dallas is this year. But it is definitely the spot you can attack New England as well. And I think that he probably has a higher target floor in this game, a higher target share in this game than John Brown.
Right.
Go ahead.
And Jonathan Jones is missing. He's their slot cornerback. He's been
I didn't know that. Okay.
He's been a shutdown cornerback this year, and he was going to be the guy that chased around Cole Beasley.
He's been good. I didn't know he was hurt.
Yeah, he's going to miss this game.
Okay, yeah, that actually gives me more interest in Beasley, but still Watson over him. I actually would probably go to Beasley over Stills, actually.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Any takes on the Rams, San Francisco receivers and these prices? Obviously, we're talking about San Francisco's number one wide receiver here in a second, but
I think let's start on the Rams side. So Cooper Kupp, there was a ton of concern about his snap count. He played 29% of the snaps in week 14. That number jumped back up to 92% in week 15. Obviously, a lot of that was buoyed by the fact that they were trailing in that game and they just had to run 3 wide receiver sets. They had to abandon the run. But if you do think a similar scenario like that happens in this game, which it very well could, then you're getting a pretty cheap Cooper Kupp. Obviously, just straight up, I'd prefer Robert Woods just because he's been acting as their number one wide receiver. Well, I should say he is their number one wide receiver. This guy's averaging like 13 targets. Just under 12 targets over his last 5 weeks.
Touchdown regression still.
Yeah, there's still a lot of touchdown regression to come his way. He's only got 2 on the year. So I definitely don't mind Robert Woods here. He will see a healthy amount of Richard Sherman, but we talk about how we view defensive matchups not too strongly. It's more about game script, pace, and this game should be, it should be played fairly fast. It's the second highest.
It's pretty clear. I think the game rankings in terms of which one's the target is very clear.
Right, you're right, exactly. And so like I don't mind it. Any of these guys, I think Woods, Kupp, obviously, like you can keep banking on a big Cooks game. I mean, he got 8 targets last week, but I'm just not going to be going there. He's obviously a guy who could break a 3-game slate though, but we just haven't seen anything from him. And on the 49er side of this, I actually do like this Emmanuel Sanders price. 5,500 is super fair for him. Just a wide receiver one on a team that should have, decent success moving the ball. He is going to see a healthy amount of Jalen Ramsey, but Jalen Ramsey has not been – he's not been bad, but he's definitely not been good either. With the Rams, he's giving up a completion rating just under 80%. It's like 77%. So I don't mind Emmanuel Sanders at 5.5K. Troy Hill, who's the second cornerback for the Rams, he's been pretty good. He's going to miss this game. So that was a guy who's going to have to contend with Deebo Samuel. So I think that gives a natural bump to Deebo Samuel a little bit as well. I think both those guys are playable. And yeah, that's probably where I'm not going down to Kendrick Bourne or anyone like that.
I just think that San Francisco is just going to run so much, and when they pass, so much of it's going to be funneled to Kittle. So
really. I agree. I agree.
I mean, Zeke's decimated the Rams. Like they're like if the Cowboys just kept running, they would have been like they could have just done whatever they wanted on the ground. And the 49ers already like to run the ball. They're supposed to win. They're at home. Like, yeah, I think that's a pretty run heavy game. That's one reason I like Mostert is that even if he only plays 55% of the snaps, well, the 49ers are going to run the ball a lot more than the Rams. So,
Sure.
And he has passing game role, but that's my toughest decision on the slate, if we're being honest. But anyway, is Gurley versus Mostert, but Mostert.
I think it's Raheem Mostert.
No, okay.
Is that not how it is?
I heard that on the Establish the Run pod, but then one of them said that they asked someone, and that's not how you pronounce it.
What is it?
I think it's Mostert. I think it's Mostert.
Okay, yeah. we'll go with Mostert then. Raheem Mostert.
Okay, going to tight end. My probably favorite play on the slate behind Watson and DeAndre Hopkins is George Kittle at 6,500. I think that you are probably going to need him on the slate. I mean, he would be the number 2 receiver for me, like on the slate. If you put him at receiver, I mean, I guess price wise, he's number 3. So like, doesn't really say a whole lot, but yeah, I think that, like you said, the Rams have Ramsey on the outside. Like you said, he also hasn't been great, but regardless of that, dude has a massive share of his team's targets. He's had some down games as well, but I just think that he's going to have a massive share of this team's air yards and targets and et cetera. So,
yeah,
you want to talk about him real quick?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you said. The Cowboys, who really don't have a tight end of note between Jarwin and Witten, they went 6-76-1 on 8 targets last week against this Rams tight end defense. It's not been that good. George Kittle's had 3 really good games against this Los Angeles team. 949-1, 591-1, and 4 catches for 100 yards. All 3 of those will play on the slate. He got 17 targets last week. He's just unguardable when they want to make him a focal point of the offense, which we anticipate they will. So yeah, he's going to have to be in play in most of your lineups. But this is could easily be a double tight end slate as well with a guy like OJ Howard, who's in a amazing spot. I mean, this Texas tight end defense has been egregiously bad. They're missing their top 2 targets by far, and it's not like a normal situation where guys are missing their top 2 targets, which would be notable. It's like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are missing, so they could run OJ Howard as a wide receiver, like Christian said. Obviously, they'll play him as a tight end. He saw 8 targets last week. He's back up 80% of the snaps.
80%. Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, he's a full go. I don't even mind Cameron Brate. I mean, Cameron Brate got 7 targets last week. You know what Christian said about Jameis Winston, telling him to be ready to handle the rock more. I mean, 2 tight end sets aren't the norm for this Tampa Bay team, but they're just going to have to adjust to it. I mean, I don't see a guy like Schnell or Hyman or anyone really getting on the field like that. I think it's just going to be a guy like Cameron Brate who's shown that, I mean, he was one of Jameis Winston's like top weapons coming into this year. Like he was like Jameis Winston's favorite guy in the red zone. So I think his touchdown equity is just as high as any other tight end on the slate. And I think a real interesting build for tournaments is if you do fade Kittle is to fade Perriman, fade Kittle, play Jameis in both his tight ends and see what happens, because no one's going to have a build like that. And that's a pretty strong build in my opinion.
Yeah. And then the only other tight end in consideration would be Tyler Higbee, who has just had a phenomenal last 3 weeks without Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett is back, but I don't think it's going to matter all that much after he goes for 300-yard games. It pretty much has been everything to this offense. I mean, the Rams probably don't put up a point last week without Tyler Higbee, if we're being honest. I mean, every single drive that they moved the ball down the field, it was Higbee.
Yeah.
That they sustained drives, it was always Tyler Higbee. So I think that Gerald Everett is going to be almost phased out of this offense. I would be surprised to see them to scale back Higbee at all. I think that they're going to see him as pretty essential to this team. Just a GBP option probably still, though. Pretty tough matchup. And while I do expect the Rams to pass a lot, I just think the other 2 tight ends, and like you said, you have serious love for Brate. I actually didn't know you had much love for Brate. I mean, I don't hate it. I'm just didn't know.
You know.
What?
Yeah. You asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say it makes sense in the spot. Like
Yeah.
it's just like you should project him for a similar workload to a guy like Tyler Higbee or Gerald Everett, as far as snaps, routes run, and I'd say his touchdown equity is probably higher, just because of the matchup
Yeah.
and because of the aggressiveness of his quarterback and stuff like that. So I think I don't know if I fully agree with you on the Tyler Higbee stuff. I know he's been awesome, but I think that's probably just more indicative of how fantasy friendly this offense could be for a lone tight end. I think a guy like Gerald Everett, I mean, I tend to go with the sample size we have prior to this 3-game sample size, which was Gerald Everett as a kind of a target monster. I mean, he has games of 11, 10, and 12 targets. I don't think he's going to jump right back into that, but I think he definitely eats away at Tyler Higbee, where both of them are probably going to be off my radar.
Yeah, I think he's going to eat it in Tyler Higbee, but I just don't think that Everett's going to return to anything near what his role used to be. That's my
Okay, that's
opinion.
fair.
I just think that Higbee's been too good. I mean, you can't take a wide receiver or tight end who's had 300-yard receiving games off the field.
Sure.
That's
You
that's a lot
wouldn't
for a
think
tight
so.
end, man.
No, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but we
Yeah.
are assuming rational coaching there, and they could just throw Gerald Everett back in the fire, like because he hasn't been bad. He wasn't bad either.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's true.
so
Rest of the tight ends, don't play them probably.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'm not even gonna talk about them. If you wanna, you can get your takes on the cheap tight ends elsewhere. Um,
yeah, probably, yeah,
I don't really have strong defensive takes, if we're being honest. I'd probably, Patriots. If you don't have to count for salary, Patriots are the top play on the slate, and 49ers are the second best play on the slate. DraftKings pretty much priced them accordingly, and I don't want to pay that much for a defense. So I'm pretty much down to picking one between these three on most of my teams that are the cheap defenses. Bills, Rams, Bucks. I'm fine with the Bills, actually. I do genuinely think Tom Brady is terrible, and I think he's pretty prone to turn the ball over a time or two here, potentially. Also, I like the Bucks. We know how bad Houston's offensive line is. We know how strong the Bucks defensive line is. I wouldn't be surprised. DVOA wise, probably a pretty heavily tilted one way here. So, like the Bucks, I think they are the chalk defense on the slate. Even though they are in the highest total game of the slate. So, if you do want to fade the Bucks because it is a tough matchup and they could even lose a point. If it isn't, you might lose more than 1 point for going over 35 points. But yeah, they're the guy. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Hoping they stop them at, 28. And then, they get a few sacks, maybe a forced fumble. Give me 5 points. I'll take it.
yeah. I don't mind that. The Bucks have a talented defense, underratedly talented defense. So I definitely don't mind them, but I think for me, I don't see salary being that big of an issue. I mean, your most expensive running back is 6.3K. Your most expensive wide receiver outside of Hopkins is 6.6K, and he's not even really in play. I just don't see salary being as restrictive as it is on a main slate. So I'll probably end up getting up to one of these bigger defenses. I like both the Pats and the 49ers. We've seen Josh Allen throw his fair share of picks, and he's got a pretty legitimate fumbling issue. We've seen Jared Goff be awful on the road, and especially under pressure, both of which, he will be this week. So I'll probably end up paying up just because I'm pretty sure I'm going to play Michelle in most there. So I'd love to go with that running back defense correlation and just leave that Tampa Bay game as it's a pure shootout, aerial shoot. So I think that's probably where I'll go in. But if salary is restricted, then, I don't mind the Bucks at all.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just fine with punching because I think I can get 5 points out of them basically, and maybe get a touchdown. That'd be cool. But I'm pretty much relying on a sack, and it's not like Watson isn't, or not just one sack, sacks. And Watson has a decent pocket presence, but he does take a good amount of sacks. I just think they're going to get a decent amount of pressure on them, and that's what I'm looking for in my cheap defense. So, okay, that pretty much wraps it up. We talked about prize picks. We actually talked about all of our picks that we had. Not as many in the later games, so keep an eye and see if they post more because none of these are really too appealing right now.
They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a play on some of them, but like a guy like James White, I don't think he'll be overly involved in this game script, but it's a PPR site, so it's tough.
Yeah, but I mean, I honestly think the under on White or Brady would be fine, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys all so much for watching. We will be back with more NFL Sunday videos. Be sure to subscribe. Don't forget to comment, of course, because you will be entered to win that free season pass. And hit that like button if you made it all the way to the end. Thank you guys so much, and good luck. on this fun little Saturday slate. And see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.